This week, I'd hoped I'd be talking to you about my first impressions with the Nikon ZR. My pre-order payment's been taken, but as of today, the 20th of October, I've not yet had a dispatch note, so that'll have to wait. Instead, we're going to take a look at the EasyRig Minimax with the Stabil Arm, and how I've gone from being lukewarm about it to pretty impressed in just one weekend. The twist that changed my mind might help you as well. I apologise if I've come across as fairly negative about the EasyRig lately, and I've had a reason. In tight interiors, boats, low ceilings, it can feel kind of like a snag magnet. You're threading yourself and a sprung arm through doorways and under pipes, and the whole time you're thinking, this is not the right tool for this job. That had very much been my experience. And then I dusted it off for a 2-day shoot the other day and remembered something I'd managed to forget. Put it in its element and it can really sing. The interesting bit is what actually changed, because it wasn't just the location. We were outside all day. Big skies, wide open spaces, plenty of room to move. I was chasing talents around, sprinting after beach balls, running away from waves, and doing it all with the EasyRig on. And the footage has turned out to be super lovely, and not just acceptable because my back's happier, but genuinely super lovely. So what flipped it? First off, mass. Counterintuitive as it sounds, I added roughly 1 kilo to the build compared to when I last used the EasyRig. Heavier made it smoother. There's a sweet spot where the camera stops pogoing and starts hanging exactly where you put it. With a very light rig, the arm spring fights you, and every footfall telegraphs a little bobble. Add a touch of ballast and that excitation dies off much quicker. It's not about turning your camera into a kettlebell, it's about giving the system enough inertia that it prefers calm. Second, the Stabil Arm. It still tops and bottoms out like badly tuned suspension if you hit its extremes, but it buys you latitude. Proper strides, quick recenters between steps, and fewer micro jolts. If you've written the Stabil Arm off just as marketing fluff, I get it. I did too at first. What changed my mind was seeing how it handled those recovery moments when you accelerate to make a beat and then ease off to settle back down again. The frame resettled faster than I expected. I'd be really intrigued to see how it compares to the Mantis rubber band solution that I'm seeing gain more and more endorsements. The third tweak, though small, actually turned out to have quite a big impact. I added a short magic arm to the left with a proper side handle, angled so that my wrist is neutral and my thumb sat naturally on the Tilter Nanonucleus 2 wheel. That one ergonomic change was absolutely night and day. Two-handed steer, stable horizon, and smooth organic focus pulls without touching the lens. As a solo cam op, it felt a little bit like cheating. I'll save you the trial and error of trying to work it all out and I'll just tell you. Right hand, conventional side handle, angled as required. Left hand though, have the handle much more perpendicular to the camera body, almost like an ergonomic frying pan handle. This way, the grip positions your thumb so it can reach the Nano 2 wheel with no stretch at all. If you feel yourself straining or stretching for it, you'll end up fighting it all day, but when it's right, your thumb just rides focus without ever having to think about it. It wasn't flawless though, or rather, I wasn't. Early on day one, I tried to keep things simple. No follow focus, just my hand on the lens, and the footage still looks fine, but I nudged the iris by accident a few times. So that's why you'll now see a bit of gaffer tape on the aperture ring from the footage from later in the day. Two much better fixes would be either assigning the iris to another nanonucleus motor so that both focus and iris could be controlled from the wheel, or rent lenses with a firmer aperture ring. Plan C was using tape, but that was all I had, so Plan C it was. If you like these real-world nuts and bolts breakdowns, not spec sheets but what actually works on location, I share more behind the scenes over on Instagram. Also, a little bit of what I get up to when I'm not operating a camera. So pop over and say hi. And if this episode helps you at all, a like here or maybe even a subscribe genuinely helps move the needle. Thank you. One big downside though, hips. By the end of day one, the belt had rubbed the skin sore. Not muscle, I don't think, just contact points. Day 2 was 9 more hours, and it kind of had that similar feeling to if you've just cycled 100 miles and camped, and then you get on the bike first thing the next day and you know you've got 100 more to cycle. That kind of thing. I was a little bit hesitant. I've got fairly bony hips, which won't help, and though I could tweak the height of the vest up and down a little bit, that didn't really make much difference either. For day 2, I put a couple of small dressings on my hips, which slightly took the edge off, but it wasn't a real fix. My shortlisted test next time would be a cushier belt wrap or some kind of aftermarket pads. I think the soreness was mostly just from persistent contact and pressure as opposed to excessive friction, but I'm not certain. So if anyone has any tips or advice for something similar, I'd love to know. Before we move on, a few setup specifics that made the day feel sorted. I tensioned the Minimax a shade stiffer than usual, so the hook height lived just above forehead level, which gave me room to dip and lean without bottoming out. I also kept the camera's centre of mass a touch forward of the top handle. That makes horizon trims with the side handles more predictable and intentional. They're quite subtle changes, but they have a surprisingly big difference to the overall calmness of the image feel. Now, the bit that really kind of surprised me, just how good the footage looked when I'd been moving quickly. There's a certain speed at which handheld shots become chattery, because the frequency of your steps lines up with the natural bob of the rig, but with the added mass and the dual side handle steer, I could stride up to that speed and then slightly lengthen my step and lean a fraction forward, and the frame would just kind of iron itself out. It's definitely not a gimbal glide, you still have a lot of kinetic camera movement, but it's the good kind of movement, intentional and not random. Right, just a quick conversation about specialising. Last week on Open Channel, I was talking about leaning further into the interiors video space, and then this weekend shoot turned up out of the blue, kind of like the perfect counter-argument, perfectly timed as well. Lifestyle work, coastal, it was just down the road, great rates of pay, and it was fun. Really fun. Plus, very kinetic, very people-focused, a totally different energy to the calm, composed world of interiors and architecture. And I loved every second. I was working alongside a fantastic creative team, some of whom I've collaborated with before, and others it was our first time together, and we really just clicked. It reminded me of how much I enjoy that side of filmmaking. The spontaneity, the teamwork, the movement, all things you might risk losing if you go too far down one highly controlled, highly specialised path. So consider this my living postscript to last week's Open Channel. Diversify your days a little so you don't forget that you love your job. But where does all this leave me on the question of EasyRig versus camera saddle? Pretty much where I was, but with a bit more respect for the EasyRig's envelope. On wide open sets, where you've got space to stride and the brief rewards that kind of kinetic coverage, it is a brilliant tool. It lets you move around with intent, settle the frame between steps, and keep your spine sane on long days. If your build has a bit of mass, even better. The inertia works for you. In cramped interiors though, low ceilings, doorways, in vehicles, on boats, or anywhere that hook height and overhead clearance are a constant negotiation, I'm going to be reaching for the rat bag. Saddles are faster for car to doorway to tripod chaos, easier under lintels and easier to rig, they're quick, they don't threaten to snag on everything above you, and they're also more adaptable if you're mixing handheld with tripod or slider, because you aren't constantly donning and doffing a vest. The point I'm trying to make isn't I was wrong about the EasyRig, not because I can't admit I'm wrong, because I can, but I'm not, and nor is it that saddles are overhyped. Both are brilliant right the way up to the edges of their envelope. Respect the envelope, get the result. I think I've been trying to force the EasyRig into jobs where the pathways and ceilings were literally all wrong, and then I was blaming the tool. Out on that beach, chasing humans, dogs, balls, and dodging waves, it was perfect. And it reminded me why I bought it in the first place, which is great, because it was expensive, and it would be such a shame just to have it languishing on a shelf. So like I mentioned, if you've solved the hip belt rub, I'd really love to know how. And if you've got an even better handle placement or a follow focus setup that you swear by, drop it in the comments. And hopefully next week we'll be taking a look at the new tool from Nikon. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful in any way, please give it a like. It really does help push the video out to more people who'll get value from it. Subscribe if you want more real-world filmmaking, gear, technique, and the occasional philosophical detour. And feel free to make use of YouTube's most recent hype feature to really hopefully give it a bit of momentum, I think. I'm Jack, this is Western Approaches, see you next time.